Okay, gentlemen, I want to give you I want to make a little change in the syllabus that I think will help us all work a little bit better. The syllabus calls for you to turn in a paper at the end of the week with these 5 columns and certain what different authors say about those. I think I'm going to, instead of that, which doesn't work out too well the way our timing is, I'm going to give you a copy of that now that we can follow and track as we go along, so you won't have to do that assignment. In place of that, however, I want you to prepare a story, a statement of the story of the book of Revelation. In other words, we did this yesterday. These are the symbols. But what story are the symbols telling us? And I'll talk some about that as we go along today. For example, he would start by saying that John was on the island of Patmos and he had this vision given to him. And then the story begins as the Lamb, Jesus, comes to the throne of God and begins to open the seals. And the first 4 seals deal with what we're going to talk, what we talked about yesterday. The first 4 seals are talking about the horsemen that symbolize God's power to do things among nations, and just kind of track the story through. And I think that'll be good for you. And I want to put that'll be one of the questions on the final exam. So if you've done that as paper, that'll help you get ready for that part of the final exam. And we'll talk about that some as we go along. So let me give you a copy of these, of this handout, and then we'll and use this as we go along, and that'll be of some help, I think. Everybody get one? Okay. Now, and that assignment will be due on Friday morning, so you'll have, we'll be through, by Thursday we'll be through with our study of the book of Revelation, so you can finish it up and turn that in on Friday morning. So I'm talking about a list, but it's not really an essay, it's a list. This happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and we'll track some of those as we go along, so I think you'll see how to do that. I'd like to start with a review of what we talked about yesterday. I'm going to now tell you something of the storyline we saw yesterday, which is related to the assignment for this here. So we have back here on the board something that I want to show you. The first part of the first act, well, the whole first act is told under 7 seals and 7 trumpets. Well, have you see that picture? Okay. 7 seals and 7 trumpets. So Jesus begins to undo the seals. The action begins. Chapter 4 and 5 kind of give us the setup and the stage setting and who is there and what things look like and all of that. But the action really begins when Jesus begins to undo the seals. So the first 4 seals send forth horsemen. We talked about those horsemen as one on the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse, as representing God's power to affect things in the affairs of men. So God begins by saying, look, I'm in charge. I'm in control. I have power. I know sometimes you may think that I'm not using it as soon as I ought to, but I have power. Then comes the 5th seal, and the souls under the altar. The souls under the altar ask the question, "Oh Lord, how long before you judge and avenge our blood on them that are on the earth? Those who have killed us and continue to kill your people, seem to be getting by with it. When are you going to use that power that you've just shown with the four horsemen? When are you going to use that power to bring this persecution to an end? God's answer is what? Tell me what God's answer is.
Wait for a while.
Wait for a while. Take a white robe and wait until more of your brethren have gone through what you've gone through. There's going to be more of it. So that's the fifth seal. Then the sixth seal has that whole list of Old Testament references, we tracked yesterday. That list of things like the heavens rolled up like a scroll and people running for caves to hide in it and all that. Sort of as a preview of what this story is going to be about. The story is going to be about the fall of a nation, just like those things all referred to the fall of a city or a nation. In the Old Testament, John clips those out of the Old Testament setting and puts them together here to say, if you know your Old Testament, you'll know what this story is going to be about. It's going to be about the fall of a nation. And then there's the interlude, the little dash, the interlude between the sixth and the seventh seal, where God says, wait, chapter 7, wait, don't start until I put my mark on my people, as a way of saying, I want you to know, those of you who are reading this book, or having it read aloud to you, I want you to know that I know you so well. I care about you so much that I put my mark on your forehead. My name is there. It doesn't say the name of God as the seal there, but later on it does. And so God is saying to them, I want you to know that I care about you, and you're mine. Whatever happens, you belong to me. He doesn't use this term, but we might use it. You've been branded. You belong to me. You've been branded. You have the seal, the mark, my mark on you. And then chapter 7 ends, this interlude period ends by a glimpse at those we saw back in chapter 6, verse 9, now wearing their white robes and serving before the throne of God, as if to say, after you've gone through this terrible difficulty and have given your lives for me, I've got wonderful things in store for you after that happens. And that's where we ended last time. Now we're going to pick up there and finish out Act 1. And with the blowing of the opening of the seventh seal, that ushers in 7 angels with 7 trumpets. And so the seventh seal is nothing but an introduction to the 7 trumpets. So when the 7th trumpet is finished, the 7th seal is finished. You see that? Because all of these belong under this. So you really, the scroll with its 7 seals reveals the whole first act of this story. So the time you finish the 7th seal, you finished the 7 trumpets, and that brings you to the end of chapter 11, which is the end of Act 1, as I've kind of divided it up for you. Okay, everybody feel okay about that? You see the way things are moving along in the storyline. And that it's kind of something like that I want you to be doing in this new paper I've given you. Okay. Now, we have pictured on the screen 7 angels. Each one of them has a trumpet. And they're about to blow their trumpets in succession, not all at once. These are soloists. They're not working as an ensemble, okay? So they're going to blow them one at a time. And just as something happens every time a seal is broken, now something happens every time a trumpet is blown. So we're going to work our way through the 7 trumpets and see what it is that those 7 trumpets have to say to us. Okay. So here come the 7 trumpets. And we're in chapter 8. Chapter 8 begins by saying that the prayers of the saints have come up to the Lord as a sweet smell of incense. And so now come the 7th seal, bringing in the 7 angels, each with a trumpet. Now, it says trumpets. That has a meaning. We have to ask, what are trumpets used for? What is the typical use of trumpets in the Old Testament? In the ancient world, what were trumpets especially used for? What do you think?
Warning.
They were used to warn. Someone stood up on the wall, and when the enemy came, they blew the trumpet. So trumpets were associated with warnings. So this is a way of saying, God says, I'm going to send out some warnings. Blowing in the trumpet, some warnings. And so somebody is being warned. Who is being warned? Well, it doesn't say specifically, but if we skip over to chapter 9, verses 21 and 22, we get a good idea of who is being warned. Because the one being warned is not going to heed the warnings, and is going to continue doing bad things. The one being warned is not going to stop his evil and his persecution. He's not going to stop his murder and his thefts and his idolatry. And so the one being warned is the one who is attacking the church. And we studied yesterday who it is that's attacking the church. At the behest of Satan, what power is attacking the church? The Roman Empire. So these warnings would be against the attacker of the church, of God's people. And so Rome is being warned. Warnings against the Roman Empire. Warnings to them to change their ways and not do the things they've been doing. So these are going to be warnings that come against that power that is persecuting. Now let's look at each of the blowing of the trumpet, and see what happens. And remember, the seals and the trumpets are basically literary devices. They're just a way of moving the story along. It's kind of like, if you go to play, you see Act 1, and then there's Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3, Scene 4, Scene 5. Well, that's what we've got here with the seals and the trumpets. The seals kind of tell us we're moving from one scene to another scene, from one movement in the play to the next movement in the play. So there's nothing mysterious about the seals and trumpets. They're just used as a way of showing the progression, the movement of ideas here. So the first trumpet is blown, and 1/3 of the land burns up. It says 1/3 of the earth, meaning specifically the land portion of the world. And so 1/3 of the land is burned up. The second trumpet is blown, and 1/3 of the sea turns to blood. The third trumpet is blown, and 1/3 of the rivers. That's not quite right on the screen. It should say 1/3 of the rivers turn to bitterness. So don't write the word blood, write the word bitterness. Turn to bitterness. The star wormwood falls. Where have you heard the word wormwood?
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, remember, he uses that word as the name of one of his little devils. And so, so 1/3 of the rivers turn to bitterness would be a better word than blood there. Turn to bitterness. And the fourth trumpet is blown, and 1/3 of the sun and the moon and the stars turn dark. Now, think for a moment. In each of these cases, only 1/3 is affected. It says 1/3. What does it mean? What does 1/3 suggest to us?
It's incomplete.
Well, yeah, it's not all of it. It's just part of it. So the destruction here is partial. Now, if you were going to send a warning to somebody, you wouldn't totally destroy them, would you? That wouldn't work. What's the use of the warning if you're going to totally destroy them? So he's not saying here, I'm going to totally destroy Rome by these means. He means, I'm going to send these in a partial way to see if it will change their behavior. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Now, notice what things are affected as these things happen. What is affected? Well, what is affected is the land, the sea, the river, and the sky. what's the significance of that? Land, sea, rivers, and sky. That constitutes all of nature, all of what we know in our world. Everything is either land, sea, rivers, or sky. That's all of it. And so what is he saying here? He's saying, I'm going to use nature, all of nature, as a way to warn. As a way to warn. And so the persecutor Rome is going to be warned by these natural disasters. Now, if you read the history of Rome during this period, you'll read of a number of natural disasters, major natural disasters. What's the most famous volcanic eruption in history? Vesuvius. Vesuvius. You know when it happened? 79 A.D. That's our time period, isn't it? 79 A.D. Vesuvius erupts and covers over the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. One of the most amazing things you'll ever see is to go there to Pompeii, where the ashes from the volcano came down so quickly it just froze people where they are, and they have it's like it was cement that caught them in certain poses, and there they are. And so they've gone through and cut out the ashes, and here is a vacancy, a mold, if you will, in the ash where a person was that chose him, in some position like this. I mean, it was just sudden, it just bang, they were all embalmed, as it were. And Pompeii was the Palm Springs of Rome. It was their city where they went to play. So all of a sudden it's totally destroyed. Rome's port city of Ostia was covered over with a flood, a great flood that just the mud got so high it just covered everything. Today you can go see where they dug it out, but it covered everything in that city.
What was that called?
Ostia, O-S-T-I-A, Ostia, port city of Ostia. See, Rome is not on the seacoast, and so they had a city where their trade came in, the port city of Ostia.
What's the volcanic eruption?
It was Pompeii, P-O-M-P-E-I-I, Pompeii.
There's something named there?
And the Vesuvius was the mountain. The city is Pompeii, and the mountain is Vesuvius. Now, I mentioned those as just examples of the fact that God, that there were a number of natural disasters. There were earthquakes and other things that happened, fires, big fire in Rome, that is famous. So, God is saying here, as I understand it, we're going to look at what others say about it in a minute. As I understand it, what God is saying here is, when people suffer through some natural disasters, it stops and makes them think a little bit. You ever been in a tornado or a flood or a fire or an earthquake or something? It pulls you up short. It makes you resort your priorities a little bit, And so I think God is saying here, I'm going to send natural disasters and see if that will cause Rome to change its course about Christianity. So that's one set of warnings by nature. Warnings by nature. Use of nature. Land, sea, river, and sky. Only to 1/3. Warning by 1/3. Not total destruction, but warning by 1/3. Okay. Now, here we come to so natural disasters to weaken and to shake and to see if Rome will respond in some useful way. Now we come to the fifth trumpet. The fifth trumpet is blown, and from the abyss. The abyss is the headquarters of evil in the book of Revelation. Sometimes it's called the bottomless pit. Satan, in chapter 20 is going to be bound in the bottomless pit, the abyss. So See, this is the headquarters of evil in the book of Revelation. And the locusts are going to come out of that abyss. Now you'd think if the locusts coming from the source of evil are going to be turned loose that they would hurt the good people, but these don't. They hurt the bad people. These locusts hurt evil men for 5 months. 5 months would be roughly equivalent to 1/3. That is, 5 months is not total, is not complete, it's not final. It is for a limited period of time, like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And so here we've got a strange picture of evil hurting itself. Evil hurting itself. Well, let me ask you, when people do sinful things, who gets hurt the worst? They do. They do. Now, they hurt other people, but other people they hurt have some recourse. If they're good people, they're not totally damaged by what harm is done to them. They've always got some way of turning that into a blessing. Even if it kills them, it'll be a blessing, you see. Let me pause right here to say that, just insert something that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but Christians live in the land of okay. Christians live in the land of okay. Can anything happen to me that will keep me from being okay? If I have a car wreck, can I still be okay? Yep. It's kind of hard. It's not easy. But I can still be okay. I just read an email 45 minutes ago before I came over here about a fine preacher somewhere who has teenage children, has just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Well, it just seems terrible, you know. But somehow that's going to work out okay. It's kind of like Paul said, you know, if I continue to be here, to live as Christ and to die as gain. Now, that means it's going to be good for his, it's going to be difficult for his family. But the courage with which they face that will be a blessing to lots of people, you see. I remember talking to a woman, good friend of mine in the church, who was about to have cancer surgery. And I was saying to her, Lou, I sure hope everything goes well. She said, it'll be okay. If they get the cancer and I live longer, it'll be okay. And if they don't, it'll be okay. The Christians live in the land of okay. We need to learn to look at things in that light. If I'm rich, I can make it okay if I make the right decisions. If I'm poor, I can make it okay if I make the right decisions for the Lord, you see. So my well-being does not depend upon the external circumstances. That's the lesson we need. If God is for us, who can be against us? So what we have here in this storyline is evil against itself. That is, evil forces hurting, bringing harm to those who do evil. Well, what do we know about the Roman Empire and its level of morality? Was it they lived by good moral standards or have low moral standards? Low is bad, wasn't it? They did lots of divorce, homosexuality, drinking, orgies, all kinds of stuff went on. Think of a nation whose highest entertainment is to sit in a great coliseum and watch people kill each other. You know, things have gotten pretty bad over here, I'll admit, but they're not that bad yet. That our entertainment is watching people kill each other. So, what he's saying here, I think, is he's going to begin, the time is coming when Rome's evil is going to begin to hurt it. The evil against itself. Evil deeds are going to hurt the evil people. So So locusts, strange-looking locusts with faces like men and hair like women and stingers in their tail, which some have said were Cobra helicopters. We'll come to that in a minute. But here the picture is locusts from an evil source coming to hurt, to bite men who are evil. And the underlying meaning is, as I understand it, is that God will use the consequences of Rome's evil deeds to begin to shake it. Things are going to begin to happen, as they always do when a nation embarks on a path of immorality. So that would be the warning from the blowing of the fifth trumpet. The warning from the blowing of the fifth trumpet. Okay. Now, from the abyss, then, the source of evil to hurt evil people, and that is evil against itself. Now, here we come to Rome's own immorality to be a warning. Now we come to the blowing of the sixth trumpet. The sixth trumpet. The sixth warning is going to come. And that warning is going to be 200 million soldiers ready to cross the Euphrates River. Okay, that's what it says. How many? 200 million. You know how many 200 million is? What's the population of the United States?
300.
You mean 2/3 of the people in the United States are going to go there and cross? I mean, that many are going to cross the Euphrates River. When I first started giving this lesson, there were only 200 million people in the United States. I'll wipe it all over. Well, okay. This huge horde of soldiers waiting to cross the Euphrates River. What could that possibly have to do with warning of some kind? Well, let me put it to you like this. About 6 or 7 years ago, I went to Germany to speak at a retreat for missionaries. And one afternoon when we were free, some of them there who were local took me to see the ruins of the northernmost outpost. The northernmost outpost of the Roman Empire. And on a wall bigger than, or maybe as big as that wall over there, was a map of the Roman Empire at its greatest extent. You know, the Roman Empire went up into Britain and way up into Germany and down into Africa. And it went to the east as far as the Euphrates River. Euphrates River was a boundary of Rome. It was its eastern boundary. And to say that a huge horde of soldiers are waiting to cross the river is a way of saying God is going to use attacks from beyond Rome's borders as a means of warning. Euphrates here stands for Rome's boundary, not just that boundary, but all the boundaries. So the boundaries of Rome are going to be breached by those who will attack from outside. Did that come true in history? What do you know about the period of Rome from maybe 100 to 350 A.D.? They had lots of attacks from the outside. You know any of the names of the tribes that attacked them? The Visigoths and the Goths and the Huns and the Vandals. They began to come in, make incursions and destroy Roman cities and take off loot and all these things. And so he says, another way I'm going to warn is these attacks are going to come and maybe with the natural disasters and the consequences of its own evil beginning to show, and these attacks from outside, maybe Rome will wake up and say, we need to straighten up and fly right. Those words are not in the Bible exactly, but that's the meaning here. Rome is going to be warned to see if indeed they will change their course about the way they're treating Christians. So, we've got these 200 million soldiers at the Euphrates, which is Rome's eastern boundary, waiting to cross, and these outside attacks will constitute warnings to see if Rome will make a change. Okay, we've been studying this now under the 6 trumpets. So we've come through trumpet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now we're back to where we were a while ago to chapter 9, verses 20 and 21. And what effect did the warnings have? Didn't change anything. Did not repent. Warnings had no effect. Rome is going to continue to do the things it's been doing. It's going to keep on with its murders and its sorcery and its idolatry and taking people's property and all those things. It's going to keep on doing that. Not going to change. You remember back in chapter 6, verses 9, 10, and 11, when God said to the cry of the early martyrs, take a white robe and wait until more of your brethren. God says, I'm going to delay a little while. Why? What's one reason he's going to delay? To give warnings. He's going to give a warning. That part of why he's delaying is so he can go through this period of warning. So, we've had the warning under the 6 trumpets. The Rome doesn't change, and now we come to the interlude, and we're in chapter 9. We're starting chapter 10. We're starting chapter 10 at this point, starting chapter 10 in the interlude. You see up here on the chart, remember you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the seals, and then an interlude when we had the 144,000 and all of that, and then number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and an interlude. So that's where we are right now, is in the interlude. So what happens in the interlude, which is chapters 10 and most of chapter 11? Okay, in the interlude, an angel comes down to John, a big angel, huge angel. He stands with 1 foot in the sea and 1 foot on the land. In his hand he has a scroll. And what does he tell John to do? To eat the scroll. John, eat the scroll. And what's going to be the effect of John eating the scroll? Yeah, well, he tells him to eat it and prophesy again, but in his mouth it's going to taste sweet, and his stomach is going to taste bitter. I've been to that restaurant. It tasted pretty good when I ate it, but after a while, it was bad. Not here in Denver, I might add. So John, what does that mean? It means, John, I've got good news and bad news for you, okay? So John eats the scroll. Now, where are we in terms of the first scroll?
7.
We're 1 trumpet away from being through with it, aren't we? You see? You see that? We've done all 6 seals. Under the 7th seal, we've got 7 trumpets, and we've done 6 of those. So we're nearly to the end of the first scroll. And so he comes and gives John another scroll and says, prophesy again. And so it doesn't say this in so many words, but I'm assuming that is a continuation of the story after the first scroll is ended with the 7th trumpet. And what comes in the second half is going to be out of the second scroll. So that's why I've said that the book comes in 2 acts, because there are 2 scrolls. First scroll, now here's another scroll, prophesy again. So that's one thing that happens in the interlude. Also in the interlude, evil forces surround the camp of the saints. We're in chapter 11 now. Evil forces surround the camp of the saints. And it's pictured as the not camp of the saints exactly, but the temple, I should say, surround the temple. Now, they fill the courts of the city, but they don't get the temple itself. Now, those who follow the Jerusalem view say, you see, this is why this is written about the destruction of Jerusalem, because the temple is still standing. The temple is still standing. Okay? But could the temple have another meaning? What did we do when we talked about the 144,000 in chapter 7? We said 144,000, but by that time, it wasn't 12,000 out of each of the 12 tribes of Israel. What was God's people by that time?
Church.
The church. What is God's temple by this time? The church. Aren't you a stone in the temple of God, Peter says? So, I think there's certainly at least another way to look at this. It doesn't have to be the literal temple standing there. It can be the temple in terms of the church, and the church being surrounded. That is, the whole story of Revelation about the church being under attack, isn't it? And that's what this says. That's what this says, as I understand it. So, we're moving now through the interlude. Let me catch up with us on the screen now. The second angel with the second scroll, eat and prophesy again. And then we come to the measuring the temple to protect it so that the temple will not be destroyed. The enemies are going to surround the temple, but they will not hurt the temple, which I believe means the church. They won't hurt the church. They're not going to get rid of the church. That's what the whole book of Revelation is about Satan trying to get rid of the church. And here it's capsuled in this interlude as the church being surrounded by its enemies, and John measuring the temple in the sense of protecting it so that the church survives even though the enemies are attacking it. Well, that fits right in with the storyline that we've suggested about the attacks from the Roman Empire. Now, still in the interlude, there come two witnesses. In a minute, we're going to go back and see what other views do with all of this, but we kind of got the story rolling, and I'd like to finish the story, and then we'll go back and look at the others. Two witnesses testify. What do we know about the two witnesses? We're in chapter 11, about verse, 5 or 6? What does it tell about the two witnesses?
And authority from the Lord.
Okay? They are God's agents. What else?
Fire comes from their mouths.
Okay? God supplies them with ways of carrying out their work.
When they're done, the beast is going to come up and kill them.
They're going to get killed and lie in the streets of the city of the beast for three days. And then they're going to be resurrected. Okay, what are the witnesses about? What's this all about? Well, let me give you my take on this. We'll come to other takes in a minute. My take on this is that these two witnesses really represent Christians of that early time who testify under duress. They're under attack, and they go ahead and give their testimony. Remember, Jesus sent out his disciples in pairs, two witnesses. At the mouth of two witnesses, so the idea of two witnesses is kind of a thing in the Bible. So these, I believe, are not just two Christians. They're not Old Testament characters come back to life. Moses and Elijah, like the temptation. The transfiguration. I believe they represent all of the early Christians who would not be stopped by these attacks, but gave their testimony anyway. And what happened to those, many of those early Christians who gave their testimony anyway? What happened to them? They got killed, didn't they? They died. Now, it says they lie in the streets of the beast, city of the beast. This is the first mention of the beast. We don't really find out who he is until later. So this is a little bit of a forecast, a little bit of a preliminary mention of the beast. We don't yet know who he is. So it's kind of a teaser to say, yeah, there's a beast in this story somewhere. But after we get a little further along, we find out who the beast is. We know the beast of the Roman Empire. Then we understand that the Roman Empire has been the one attacking these witnesses, and in fact has been able to kill a lot of them. But does that mean that the beast is going to win the war? Who eventually is going to win the war? Christ and his witnesses are. So they kill the two witnesses and think they have won. They rejoice because they think they've won. Then the witnesses are resurrected, and it turns out they didn't win after all. That's what I understand those witnesses to be, representing these early Christians, testifying of their faith in Jesus, even under duress, even when it means death to them, and they are killed by the thousands. And Satan and his forces, the Roman Empire, seemingly have won. But in the end, they didn't. The witnesses were resurrected, and what seemed like a victory for Satan and his forces turned out to be defeat. Okay, that's my take on the two witnesses. We'll come back to some other things on that in a minute. Now we move down to the blowing of the seventh trumpet. The blowing of the seventh trumpet. We've talked now about the witnesses. The seventh trumpet is blown, and with the blowing of the seventh trumpet, there is great rejoicing in heaven and praise to God, because he has taken his power. Notice that expression there in the last part of chapter 11. He has taken his power. Back in chapter 6, God showed his power with the four horsemen. And what was the response of the early martyrs? How long? Why don't you use it, Lord? You got all that power. Why don't you use it? Wait a while. Not yet. And now the word comes. God has taken his power. He's going to unleash his power. So those who were puzzled, anxious maybe, at least questioning why God didn't go ahead and do it, now rejoice because he has taken his power and is going to destroy the one who has been doing the destroying. I don't take this to mean the final judgment. Some do. I don't take this to mean the final judgment. Who has been destroying in this storyline? Roman Empire. So who is he going to destroy? He's going to destroy the one who's been doing the destroying. He's going to destroy that one who has been trying to harm the church. He's going to bring it down to defeat. It hadn't happened yet, but the announcement of the fall has come. The announcement. And with that announcement, there is great joy in heaven. Because God is now ready to make his move. It's from this passage that we have the Hallelujah chorus. The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. and was Messiah. So, this comes out of that passage. It's amazing how many songs come out of the book of Revelation. We'll mention some more of that as we go along. And so the announcement of the fall is coming, and there's great joy in heaven, and at that point, the curtain falls on Act 1. That's where Act 1 is. Great joy in heaven. And so, that's taking place, and we have now the curtain falling on Act 1. Okay. Back to the board now. Let's see how all this fits together. I want you to get the picture of what's on the board in your mind. Okay? Here's the scroll, 7 seals. First 4 seals are the 4 horsemen. 5th seal is the question, how long, O Lord? Not holy and true, do you not judge and avenge our blood on them that are on the earth? Wait a while, and I'll take care of it. The 6th seal, all those Old Testament passages saying, if you know what those mean, you'll know this story is about the fall of a nation. And then comes the 7th seal, which introduces 7 trumpets. And with the 7 trumpets, the first 4 show God's warning against the persecutor by the use of nature, forces of nature. The 5th seal shows that God will warn by the use of the consequences of its evil against itself. The 6th trumpet warns by the coming of forces from beyond its borders to begin attacks. And finally, the 7th trumpet is blown, and the announcement comes of the fall, and there's great joy in heaven. And upon that, the first act closes. Now, could you take that and tell somebody the story of Act 1? See, that's what I'm wanting you to do in this paper that I mentioned to you, is to tell the story of Act 1. That's what we got right here, the story of Act 1. The 7 seals, the 7 trumpets. Now, I handed out a sheet to you with what the different theories say, so let's go to those. We'll take a look at those. We're starting with chapter 8. You see the page that says chapters 8 through 11. 8 through 11. Okay. Now, on the left side is the event that takes place. The first trumpet, the second trumpet, and so on. And then what each of the 5 theories says about it. And the last column over there on the right is what I have just given you. So let's go through these other 4. What would you expect Hines to do? He's the one who has the view that everything is moving to tell the story of the history of the world from the first coming to the second coming. And we went through the first 5 trumpets, the first 5 seals, and each one was a successive period of time in the Roman Empire. Remember that? So what do you expect him to have? More events in the history of the Roman Empire, and when it's gone, then more history after that, you see? So that's what he's got. Fall of Rome. That is when 1/3 of the earth burns up, he says that's the fall of Rome under the Gothic invasion under Alaric near 408 AD. Second trumpet, sea turns to blood, attack on Rome from the sea. First one by land, the second one by sea, okay? Land and sea. You see how he gets that? And then the third trumpet is the attack on Rome by Attila the Hun, 452 AD. He is the star that falls. And then some other devastating power comes by the sun, moon, and stars, and the fall finally comes in 476 AD. And so by the end of the 4th trumpet, he says, we're through with the Roman Empire. It's fallen now. The 5th trumpet, the swarming of the locust, that's Mohammed and the rise of Islam. See how we're moving through world history? I mean, this is a pretty good recitation of world history he's got there, you see. So we're moving through world history. So here is Mohammed and the rise of Islam. Well, weren't they like swarming locusts? Isn't that a pretty good figure for the way? Yeah, I can see that. Go back to where we started yesterday, see, depends on where you start, doesn't it? See, it depends on where you start. You start with the assumption that this is telling the history of the world, why you can see a way to make that work. Fall of Jerusalem, you can see a way to tie all that in. And the view I've given you about the fall of Rome and the Roman persecution, I'm showing how all that ties in. Now, if my assumptions are wrong and some of these assumptions are right, then you ought to take their view, see? So I'm not trying to put anybody's view down, I'm just showing you how it works. Fifth trumpet, he says, is Muhammad and the rise of Islam with all those locusts. And then he comes to the sixth seal, the earthquake, and he says that's Constantine coming, because Constantine really shook things up, didn't he? He made Christianity the Roman religion. Edict of Toleration in 315 or whatever it was there. So that's Constantine. 144,000, large numbers of fleshly Jews to be saved after Constantine. Great multitude in heaven is those who are saved among the Gentiles, and then the seventh seal is the transition to the seven trumpets. So we've got there, gone through the seals as he sees them, and now we're coming to his view of the trumpets. Wait, I switched back to seals instead of trumpets. Scratch that last few bit. I got on the wrong page. Sixth trumpet is the Turks. This is after this. We're back to after the Islam and the locusts. Sixth trumpet, 200 million Turks. 1055 to 453. They crossed the Euphrates River, and they're gonna tear things up for a while. And so he says that the event in history by the sixth trumpet is the Turks. Then the angel coming down, he says, is the Reformation movement. The angel is like John Calvin and Martin Luther bringing the Bible back to the people. What he's bringing is the Bible. And the temple that's not going to be destroyed, as the New Testament teaching, is the measuring rod. You got to measure. Don't you believe that? Don't you believe the New Testament's the measuring rod? You measure the correct doctrine. And then the beast is the man of sin, from 1 Thessalonians. And the witnesses are the Old and New Testaments. The two witnesses stand for the Old and New Testaments. And some who hold this view say they are Martin Luther and John Calvin. Well, that's not Hein's view, but others who take that position say they're Martin Luther and John Calvin, corresponding to his view about the angel bringing in the Reformation movement. So those would be the things that you get as you go down the view of John Hines. Okay, let's go back another view. And let's take this time the view of Hendrickson. Back to where it says chapters 8 through 11. Sorry, these are kind of hard to operate here. 8 through 11. Hendrickson says, throughout the Christian age, persecutors will have land disasters to punish and warn. So he applies it to the persecutor, but not to Rome, the persecutor, just to any persecutor. You see, that's the mindset with which he starts. It's not Rome, it is any political. Everywhere Christ goes forth on the white horse to be preached, persecution is going to follow from political powers and religious opposition. So he ties all of them into that, and does a very good job of it. See, if you start with that assumption. So throughout Christian age, persecutors will have sea disasters. And there'll be some floods. See, he says they're warning. He and I would agree on that they're warnings, but I would make them more specifically aimed at a persecuting power. He says any persecuting power. The fourth trumpet, abnormal functioning of heavenly bodies. I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, going to be some strange things in the sky. The fifth trumpet, these locusts from the abyss, power of the devil, even becomes a warning to the wicked, the influence of hell working among men. And then with the sixth trumpet, remember Hendrickson is going to have us come from the first coming to the second coming. How many times in the book of Revelation? 7 times. Chapters 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9. We're now nearly to the end of 9, so what's going to come up in 9? Something about the end of the world, you see. So he's got here, the sixth trumpet is wars near the end of the age. See, we're coming up on the end of the age. And the angel, he says, is Christ, and the temple is the church, and the beast is the persecuting power of Satan through nations, and the witnesses are the true church. So a lot of those things, it would be pretty much like the view I've given you, except mine is through a microscope, and his is through a telescope, sort of. See, his takes the big view. This can apply everywhere. Mine says it's got a more specific application than that. I hope you're getting the feel for these views. Now, I want you to get the feel for these views. Okay, let's go back now to look at Fort Wallace. Fort Wallace has got the Jerusalem view. So he's gonna fly these and follow Jerusalem to find a way to make them fit. Okay. The first trumpet is the total destruction of Jewish powers. And that part of nations represented by Jewish powers. 1/3 of the land. The second trumpet, 1/3 of the sea turns to blood, destruction of the powers of Rome, signified by the sea, because they were a great sea power, and they also were persecuting. Not only the Jews were persecuting, the Romans were persecuting, and so this shows the destruction of Jews and Romans from persecuting the church. The third trumpet, the star falls, downfall of rulers of Jerusalem. Those among the Jews that were leading in the wrong way, and represents the calamities of the fall of Jerusalem. And the fourth trumpet, 1/3 of the sun, moon, stars are dark, and darkness falls over the Jewish state. Well, I've got a question for Mr. Wallace. Why does it say 1/3 is going to get dark if the whole thing is going to get dark by his interpretation? Well, that doesn't quite fit, does it? See? He says darkness falls over the Jewish state. Well, that wouldn't be signified by 1/3 darkness. 1/3. And so all the way through, he's got complete destruction from 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The fifth trumpet is blown, and this, he says, is the Neronian War of 70 AD on Judea and Jerusalem under the Roman leader. That is the swarming of the locusts, or Roman soldiers. They're coming up. And then the sixth trumpet is blown. This is another symbol for the hordes of the Roman army coming. These 200 million Turks crossing the Euphrates. Interlude, he says, is Christ coming to announce the near end of things in the book, the fall of Jerusalem. And the temple, spiritual Israel, the church is measured and protected. Agree with that. The beast, the Roman Empire. The witnesses are Old Testament prophets and the apostles. One of them represents Old Testament prophets. One of them represents New Testament prophets. And then, so you see how he ties those things into the fall of Jerusalem. Now let's go back to see the Hal Lindsey view. Hal Lindsey view. One-third of the earth burns up is a massive nuclear attack. See, he doesn't see these as symbolic. He says John saw modern warfare. He just didn't know what to call it. his Greek vocabulary at the time didn't have words like nuclear bomb, or H-bomb, or atom bomb, or helicopter. So he did the best he could. What he saw in the vision was modern warfare. That's what he saw, was modern warfare. And he used the best vocabulary he could to describe it. So, 1/3 of the earth is burning up, and Lynch says that sounds like a big nuclear attack to me. 1/3 of the sea turns to blood. You remember that 1/3 of the sea turned to blood was a mountain exploded into the sea? That's an H-bomb. Explodes and spreads nuclear radiation into the water and kills things in the water. And again, I've got the question of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. See, that doesn't quite fit what he's saying here with these kinds of destruction. Star falls, that's nuclear weapons which contaminate fresh water. Fourth trumpet is the reduction of light from air pollution. See, when all this nuclear war is going on, what's going to happen? Well, all that stuff is going to get in the air, and it'll hide the sun, and moon, and stars because of the pollution in the air. And the sixth trumpet, he says, is either Cobra helicopter gunships or mutant locusts possessed by demons. Take your choice, he says. They're either Cobra helicopters or mutant locusts that are inhabited by demons. Then the sixth trumpet, 200 million Chinese soldiers with mobile missile launchers come to the Holy Land. On Friday, when we talk about the whole picture of the premillennial view, I'm going to tie all these in a way that you'll see how they all fit. We're kind of hit and miss on what he says right now as we're sort of just picking little pieces of it. So I'm going to put all that together for you and show you how the scenario he builds out of all of this. We'll do that on Friday afternoon. But he says the sixth trumpet is the unleashing of. How does he draw that conclusion? Well, they're going to cross the Euphrates River from the east side toward the west. What nation on the east side of the Euphrates has got enough soldiers to be 200 million? Who's got that many soldiers? Well, China's got a population big enough to have that many soldiers. I guess India does too, but he picks China. And so, no offense to China, but anyway, he picks to India or China, but he picks China. So he says that this is the Chinese army with modern warfare crossing the Euphrates River, and eventually, according to his view, there are going to be 300 million soldiers fighting in the land of Israel. Or who's going to have it? 300 million soldiers. 300 million soldiers. You know how many soldiers we've now got in Iraq?
140 or
140, 50s, 160,000. The surge brought it up to 160,000, I think. Imagine not 160,000, but 300 million soldiers involved in nuclear war. I mean, the picture boggles the mind here in terms of possibility.
logic doesn't even seem to be a factor.
No. Israel is a land about the size of New Hampshire. Can you imagine 300 million soldiers fighting in the state of New Hampshire?
Must be localized nuclear.
Yeah. So anyway, but you see where he gets it. He reasons. Got to be 200 million. It's got to be literal. See, that's the presumption he starts with. It's a literal war. So you got 200 million soldiers crossing the Euphrates, and they come from China, which could supply that many soldiers. And so they're coming to attack Israel, because his whole scheme is who's going to possess Israel, who's going to be in charge in the land of Israel. He believes that God still has an interest in Jews living in Israel, and Israel being an important country in world affairs again. And so all this is the buildup for that. So 200 million soldiers coming from China to attack. Then the angel, he says, is Michael. One of the things that Michael says is there will be no more delay. He tells John there will be no more delay. What did God say in chapter 6, verse 10? There'll be a delay. You see? And this angel comes and says, okay, there'll be no more delay. That is, God has done the warning, and the persecuting has gone on, and it's gone on long enough, and now God is ready to make his move. There'll be no more delay. And so he takes that and applies it into the world. It won't be any more delay before Christ returns, and we have his coming back. The beast is the European Antichrist, which is a revival of the Roman Empire. He agrees it's Roman Empire. But since the first Roman Empire didn't get to fulfill this, the Roman Empire is coming back. It's already started in Europe because they've got that coalition of nations over there called the European Common Market. And that's the beginnings of the revival of the Roman Empire, which is going to fulfill all these prophecies. We'll talk about that more on Friday. And the witnesses, he says, are Moses and Elijah who've come back to earth to preach during this first 3.5 years of the tribulation. Okay, well, I'm wanting you to get the feel of these views. They are reasonably consistent views. I wouldn't say they're totally consistent, but they start with some premises, and they live up to those premises, don't they? See, they follow their scheme, and they work it out according to those premises. And so if they're, whichever set of premises is right, is probably the view that's correct. So that's why we started by telling you what my premises were. See? So I hope you see how this thing is going. All right. Now, we've got then the coming of the final events in this, the final events. Let me mention just 2 or 3 more things, and we'll take a break. At the very end, at the blowing of the 7th trumpet, we've got these witnesses testifying for the 1260 days, and then they fall in this great city where they're going to be opposed and killed. And then we have the announcement of some kind of fall. So, as you would expect, Hines says that 1260 days is basically what he would call the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. From the time of the start of the Roman Catholic Church until the Reformation movement, which he says is about 533 to 1793, is the 1260 days, which he says represents 1260 years. So, from the start of the Roman Catholic Church, which for which date he picks 533, there's not, in my opinion, a very good reason to pick 533, but anyway, he picks that. And the French Revolution, so you see how he's lining it up with the world events. Great city is papal Rome, and the 7th trumpet means the end of the world. Hendrickson says the 1260 days are from the ascension of Christ almost to Judgment Day. See, Hendrickson is about to come to another end of time moment, you see. So that end of time moment is going to be, suggested by the end of the 1260 days. And so witnesses oppose the great city is whatever opposes the true church of God, and the 7th trumpet, the final judgment, the end of his 3rd cycle. Under Wallace, 1260 days is the time of the siege and destruction in Jerusalem, 3.5 years from the first thing that looks like there's going to be a move made until its end, he says, is 3.5 years. And the great city in which the bodies lie, not Rome, but Jerusalem. And the seventh trumpet represents the fall of Judaism. All of Judaism. Of course, Lindsay has the 1260 days being the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. This is two parts of the tribulation, the first half, second half. This end of the second half, tribulation, terrible wars, ending with the battle of Armageddon. And the great city is Jerusalem, and the last judgment is to begin with the blowing of the seventh trumpet. So, those different pictures of what this is all about. Okay, we're going to take our break now, and we'll take a few minutes to rest and reconnoiter and regain our senses and cleanse our minds
That's a lot to do in a few minutes.
and our bodies. And so we'll take now until 3:30 and come back and restart at that time. Okay. You got banged up through there? Hurt your car through there? That's the worst part. Yeah, it'll get well, but cars another thing. Well, you're from Hunan. Wuhan. Wuhan. You know my friend Mike O'Brien?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. He was my student at Oklahoma Christian College.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I know he went to Oklahoma.
Yeah. I had him in class. I was one of his teachers. Yeah, I've known him, followed his career. I'm thrilled to know that he baptized you. That's great. I get his newsletters about going to the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad to know that. The church where I go sent him a contribution to help with relief work over there.
Oh,
his
yeah.
foundation.
The earthquake?
Yeah, we sent about $20,000
Wow.
to help. So I don't know whether that's a riot or how it's getting there, but anyway, we took up a collection for that.
He has done a lot of good work.
Yes, he has. He has. I'm really proud of him. I just think he's done wonderful.
A lot of Americans coming over.
He stays.
He stays.
Yeah. Went over there to teach. Is he still a student? He taught for a while and then decided he could do more good being a